My husband emptied out our bank account while I was unconscious in the hospital. I deserve this after everything I've done for you, his message said. I replied with a single thumbs-up emoji. When I was discharged the next day, I didn't go home. My name's Charlotte Miller, 48 years old, and I've spent 24 years as a long-haul trucker. Not exactly a glamorous career, but it paid the bills and kept my husband, Tom, living comfortably in a lifestyle he never seemed to appreciate. For weeks, I'd felt this tightness in my chest. Just stress, I kept telling myself, long hours, restless nights in truck stops across the Midwest, and too many cups of cheap diner coffee. But somewhere outside Kansas City, the pain became unbearable. I pulled over on the shoulder and called 911. They airlifted me to St. Louis, Missouri. Turned out it wasn't a panic attack, it was heart failure. I remember the doctor's worried face before everything went black. "We're losing her," she said. 2 days later, I woke up in the cardiac ICU, a stent in my chest and tubes in my arms. The nurse told me I'd flatlined twice. She said I was lucky. But I didn't feel lucky when I checked my phone. There was just one message from Tom. We'd been married 17 years. No kids, just a mortgage on a house in St. Louis, and a lot of quiet, awkward dinners when I was home between hauls. The message had a screenshot of our joint account. Balance, $0. Underneath, he wrote, "I deserve this after everything I've done for you. $63,250, my emergency fund, my truck maintenance account, my retirement cushion, all gone." I should have felt rage. But instead, I just felt empty. A bone-deep exhaustion no amount of sleep could cure. So I sent him a thumbs-up emoji. Nothing else. When the doctor came in, he gently reminded me I needed to rest. No stress. No driving for at least 6 weeks. He asked if someone was coming to get me tomorrow. Yeah, I lied. That night, I called my sister Melissa. We hadn't spoken in almost a year, not out of anger, just busy lives. "Need a favor," I said. "Say no more," she replied without hesitation. "I need a place to stay for a few days. And I need you not to tell Tom." There was a pause. "He doesn't know you're alive?" "Oh, he knows," I said. "He just doesn't know I'm not coming home. I met Tom 20 years ago at a gas station near Tulsa. He was stranded with a dead battery, and I jumped his car. Back then, he looked at me like I was a superhero. Funny how the things that once make someone love you become the things they later take for granted. We married 6 months after that. I was 31, he was 28. Old enough to know better, young enough to believe in forever. He never liked that I was gone 3 weeks out of every 4, but he loved the money. I called home every night, sometimes for an hour. As the years passed, the calls got shorter. 5 minutes of updates, then just check-ins. In the last couple of years, it was mostly texts. Made it to Denver. All good. Looking back, there were signs. Tom stopped asking when I'd be home. Started taking weekend trips with friends I never met. But I trusted him. Marriage is about trust, right? Melissa helped me into her guest room that night. She's a school teacher, twice divorced, sharp, and practical. As she handed me a sandwich, she asked, "Does Tom know you're here?" "No," I said. "And we're going to keep it that way." I wasn't hungry. I just sat there thinking about the house I'd refinanced 6 months ago when rates dropped. Tom had said he was too busy to come to the signing, so I put it in my name. My credit score was better anyway. There was also the medical power of attorney I'd set up last year after a friend's stroke. My niece, Emily, a law student, helped me with it. Smart kid. Made sure everything was airtight. 3 days later, I got a text from our neighbor, Linda. "Haven't seen you around. Everything okay? Tom's got someone over. Thought you should know." I sat with that for a long while. No response. Later that afternoon, Melissa drove me downtown to the bank, not our local branch where Tom and I were known, but the main office. I asked to speak to a fraud specialist. I showed the message and the bank statement, explained I'd been hospitalized and unconscious when the withdrawals happened. The banker was polite but firm. "It's a joint account, Ms. Miller. It may be difficult." "I understand," I cut in. "But I want to try anyway." Back at Melissa's, I called a lawyer friend of hers named Sharon. I explained everything: the house, the money, the marriage. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, piecing together all the signs I'd ignored: the late-night phone checking, the changed passwords, the weekend getaways. By morning, I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And that, I realized, was the most powerful thing of all. Melissa's brother, Andrew, was a local contractor, twice divorced and no stranger to disappointment. "You should eat something," he murmured, handing me a plate. I pushed the food around but didn't take a bite. My mind was fixed on the home I had purchased, the one I refinanced just 4 months back when mortgage rates dipped. Tom had claimed he was swamped with work and couldn't make the signing, so I had gone alone. In the end, it was titled only under my name. My credit was stronger, and he hadn't even asked to look at the documents afterward. There was also the medical power of attorney I'd finalized the year before. After witnessing a friend's struggle when her partner suffered a stroke, I knew I had to prepare. My niece, Emily, a law student, walked me through the paperwork. She double-checked every detail, making sure it was airtight. "Does Tom know you're here?" Andrew asked as he settled onto the couch across from me. "No," I said quietly. "Let's keep it that way for now." "He drained everything?" I nodded. "What's next for you?" I forced myself to take a nibble from the plate. It tasted like cardboard. "First, I rest." "Doctor's orders," I murmured. But that night, rest never came. I lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, reflecting on the countless moments I had dismissed: the quick glances at his phone, the frequent password changes, the transfers between accounts he claimed were for better savings rates. I hadn't wanted to believe it, but the pieces were falling into place. 3 days into my stay at Andrew's, I received a message from our neighbor, Linda. "Haven't seen you in a while. Everything okay? Tom's had someone over a lot. Thought you should know." I stared at the screen for a long time without typing back, just letting it sink in. That afternoon, Andrew drove me downtown to the main branch of our bank, not the small neighborhood location where the tellers knew our faces. I requested to speak to someone in the fraud department. Calmly, I presented the message and a copy of the account statement. I explained that during the transactions, I had been in the hospital under sedation with no ability to consent. The woman across the desk maintained a composed, professional manner, but something flickered in her eyes, maybe sympathy, maybe quiet outrage on my behalf. "Ms. Miller, we can open a fraud investigation," she explained. "But since this was a joint account and your husband has legal access, it may be challenging." "I understand," I said firmly, "but I want to pursue it anyway." She nodded, fingers tapping across her keyboard. "We'll need documentation from the hospital showing the dates and times you were unconscious or otherwise unable to act on your own." "Not an issue," I assured her. She gave a gentle warning. "If this moves into criminal territory, the authorities will likely become involved." I met her gaze. "I'm ready." On the way back, Andrew pulled into a gas station. I waited inside the truck, watching a mother shepherding 2 small boys toward the ice cream freezer inside. Life kept moving outside this storm. "Want anything?" Andrew called through the open window. I shook my head. Once back at the house, I made 3 critical calls. First, to my trucking company, explaining I would need extended medical leave. Second, to my credit union, where I kept a separate account for side work. Third, to Sharon, the attorney Melissa recommended. "I need to know what my options are," I explained over the phone. "The house, the accounts, all of it." Sharon offered to meet the following day. That evening, I powered up my laptop, logged into financial accounts Tom didn't know existed, and reviewed investment statements he'd never shown interest in. It wasn't secrecy, it was simply that he'd never cared about the details until now. And now, the battle was just beginning. I wasn't keeping anything secret from Tom, he just never cared about the less exciting parts of our finances. As I reviewed the accounts, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message lit up from Tom. "Where are you? Your truck isn't at the yard. Did the company tell you I came by?" I stared at the screen but didn't answer. A minute later, another message. "Charlotte, this is ridiculous. You can't just vanish. We need to talk." I set the phone face down. Andrew glanced over from the kitchen. "He trying to get hold of you?" "Yeah," I murmured. "Are you going to answer?" I slowly shut the laptop. "Not yet." That evening, I slipped on a jacket and went for a walk through Andrew's neighborhood. The sky was clear, stars sprinkled across the dark canvas, the crisp Missouri air filling my lungs. For the first time since the hospital, my chest didn't ache. Not physically, anyway. As I strolled beneath the street lamps, it hit me, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even heartbroken. I was simply done. And with that came a surprising sense of peace. Tom hadn't just drained our accounts. He'd given me something I didn't realize I needed, a clean break. A week after I was released from the hospital, I finally went back to the house. Midday, when I knew Tom would be at work. I unlocked the door and stepped inside as if I were coming home from another trip. The scent hit me immediately, cologne that wasn't his. Empty bottles lined the recycling bin. 2 wine glasses sat in the sink. I moved methodically, packing a small duffel with clothes, collecting vital documents, and grabbing the locked metal box from the closet where I kept my passport and birth certificate. As I passed through the hallway, I noticed something missing. The framed photo from our wedding, which had always sat on the entry table. Gone. I stood still for a beat, then walked out without looking back. Back at Andrew's, I met with Sharon, the attorney. We sat at his kitchen table, papers spread around us like puzzle pieces. Sharon flipped through the refinancing documents. "This is interesting," she noted. "Because you refinanced in your name alone, combined with the fact that you were medically incapacitated, you have a solid claim to keep the house." "And the money?" I asked quietly. Sharon's brow furrowed. "That's where it gets complicated. Joint accounts usually mean joint assets." But she tapped the statement with her pen. "Since he emptied it while you were incapacitated, we might have a case for financial exploitation, especially given that most of the income came from your work." I nodded slowly. "And if I file for divorce?" "Missouri's an equitable distribution state," Sharon said. "But under these circumstances, we can likely push for a favorable settlement." She began stacking the papers. "I'll draft the initial filings. In the meantime, don't engage with him. Any communication goes through me." The following afternoon, Tom showed up at Andrew's. I was home alone. Andrew had gone to a job site. I heard the crunch of tires in the gravel drive, the car door slam. 3 sharp rings at the doorbell, followed by knocking. "I know you're in there, Charlotte. Your rig's parked around the corner." His voice was muffled, but unmistakable. "You can't hide from me forever. We need to sort this out." I sat motionless on the living room couch, heart steady, breath calm. Eventually, the knocking stopped. For a moment, I thought he'd left, until the phone buzzed again. "I'm sorry about the money." I was angry. "You've been distant for months. I thought maybe you were seeing someone." When I found out about the house refinance, I panicked. "We can fix this. Please talk to me." It was the first time he'd ever accused me of cheating. Classic projection, I thought. I flipped the phone over, screen down, and didn't reply. The next morning, Sharon called. "Tom's attorney reached out," she said. I straightened in my chair. "Already?" "Yep. He's hired a tough lawyer. They're trying to argue that your absence after the hospital amounts to desertion." I let out a long exhale. "So, what do we do next?" Sharon's voice was calm, steady. "We stay ahead of them. I'm filing for an emergency motion regarding the funds. The judge assigned to your case doesn't look kindly on spouses who take advantage of someone during a medical crisis." I closed my eyes for a moment. "Thank you, Sharon. Let's do it." As I hung up, I realized something. This wasn't just about money or property. This was about reclaiming my own life, and I wasn't about to back down. Tom's hired Marion Keller as his lawyer, Sharon told me over the phone. She's one of the most aggressive divorce attorneys in Illinois. She'll go after the house, pensions, savings, even your future earnings. I ran a hand through my hair. What does that mean for us? It means he's preparing for a fight. Keller's already framing your absence after the hospitalization as abandonment. She's painting you as erratic, claiming you left without explanation and won't respond to him. I exhaled slowly, my chest tight. So, what's our next step? We move fast, Sharon said firmly. I've already filed for an emergency hearing regarding the money he drained from the accounts. Judge Kavanaugh will be handling the case, and he has zero patience for anyone exploiting a medical crisis. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time, just staring at the pale blue wall of Andrew's guest room. Then I picked up my phone and called Emily, my niece. I needed her sharp mind for something specific. That night, I drove by the house. Tom's car was in the driveway, parked next to a sleek silver Mercedes I didn't recognize. I circled the block once, heart pounding, then headed back to Andrew's. As I pulled into the driveway, a text arrived from an unfamiliar number. This is Marion Keller. I represent Tom Miller. Any further observation of my client's residence will be considered harassment. Please direct all communication through legal channels. They were watching me. I was watching them. The gloves were off. 2 weeks later, Sharon and I appeared in court. It was the emergency hearing over the missing funds. Tom was there with Keller, both dressed sharply. I wore the only formal outfit I owned, the one I usually reserved for weddings or funerals. Judge Kavanaugh, a tall man with thinning gray hair and small glasses, sat at the bench, reading through the files with little expression. Occasionally, his eyes flicked up to Tom, then to me. Ms. Keller, he said at last, your client withdrew the full balance of the joint accounts while Ms. Miller was hospitalized for a major cardiac event. Is that correct? Keller rose smoothly. Your Honor, my client had legal access to those accounts. Furthermore, Ms. Miller refinanced their home solely in her name without Mr. Miller's knowledge. We consider that the first instance of financial misconduct. Judge Kavanaugh removed his glasses and gave her a measured look. I'm not addressing the home at this moment, Counselor. I'm asking about the withdrawals. Was your client aware that Ms. Miller was in the hospital at the time? Tom leaned toward Keller, whispering. Keller cleared her throat. Yes, Your Honor. But my client was under severe emotional strain, believing the marriage was collapsing. He acted to secure his own finances. The judge slid his glasses back on. It's difficult to believe that an unconscious woman was actively ending her marriage during a heart attack. He rifled through the papers again. I am ordering that the withdrawn funds be frozen until further decisions are made during the divorce proceedings. Neither party will access these funds until the court resolves the matter. It wasn't an outright victory, but it stopped Tom from burning through what was left. As we exited the courthouse, Tom tried to approach me. Keller reached out, placing a firm hand on his arm, but not before Tom said quietly, Charlotte, please. There's more to this than you know. I walked right past without a glance. Outside, Sharon gave a small, satisfied nod. This is just the opening round. Now we move into discovery. Discovery? I asked. She smiled slightly. That's where we put all the cards on the table. A week later, Sharon called me into her office. When I arrived, she handed me a thick folder. We've uncovered something, she said, her tone turning sharp. Sharon slid a folder across her desk toward me. Inside was a bank statement from an unfamiliar account. Tom's name was on it. The balance read $129,780.92. I frowned. Where did this come from? Emily tracked it down, Sharon explained. Her internship at the regional credit union gave her access to some useful insights. This account was opened about a year and a half ago. Routine deposits, all just below the $10,000 reporting threshold. Classic method for hiding funds. She tapped the papers. There's more. The deposits line up almost perfectly with your travel schedule. Each time you were on the road, money was added. I leaned back in my chair, heart sinking. He's been laying the groundwork for over a year and a half. Sharon shook her head slowly. I'm not convinced he intended to walk away. More likely, he was building a safety net in case you did. Why would I leave him? I asked quietly. I was working myself to exhaustion to keep things going. Sharon reached for another document, sliding it across. It was a credit card statement with a charge from a boutique hotel in Chicago, dated 3 months ago. That week, I'd been in Denver. The name on the reservation was Linda Price, our neighbor, the same one who had texted to warn me about the visitor at the house. Sharon's face turned grim. We believe Linda's been involved with Tom for quite some time. She likely played the part of a helpful neighbor while keeping tabs on you. Tom, meanwhile, was draining the accounts while you were fighting for your life. I stood, anger finally sparking in my chest. What's our next step? A small smile tugged at Sharon's mouth for the first time that afternoon. That's up to you. But if it were me, I'd make sure they both regret thinking they could get away with this. The next month became a blur of recovery at Andrew's house. While my body healed, Sharon and Emily meticulously pieced together our case. We now had a roadmap: collect every shred of evidence, trace the money, and expose the relationship between Tom and Linda. Emily became invaluable. Her access to the credit union allowed her to track subtle patterns we might have missed otherwise. One evening, she showed up at Andrew's with an update. The account has a secondary user, not a co-owner, but someone authorized to make transfers. Linda? I guessed. She nodded, lips pressed into a thin line. And there's another issue. They've started moving the funds again, smaller chunks into different accounts. They know we're onto them. I gazed out the window, watching the last of the sunlight fade. They're getting ready to disappear. That night, I called Sharon. We need to act faster. I agree, she said cautiously, but we can't spook them too early. We need something that'll make them hesitate. The following morning, I drove by the house while Tom was at work. I didn't step inside. Instead, I walked the edge of the property, snapping photos with my phone. The brand-new garden shed Linda had helped install last summer. The elaborate landscaping that had appeared while I was away on a 3-week haul to California. All of it paid for with my earnings, boosting the value of a house now held solely in my name. I sent the photos to Sharon with one word: documented. 2 days later, Sharon called with unexpected news. Tom's lawyer just reached out. They're proposing a deal. Tom is willing to return half of the withdrawn money if you agree to split the house's equity evenly. They're feeling us out, Sharon said over the phone. Seeing if we'll cave for a cheap deal. I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring out the window. What's our reply? For now? Nothing, Sharon said calmly. Let them sweat a little. In the meantime, I took another step. I reached out to my company's HR office. After 20 years behind the wheel, I had paid into disability insurance without ever needing it. I explained what had happened: the heart attack, the recovery, the doctor's orders. The HR rep was kind but direct. You qualify for 60% of your regular income for up to a year. We'll send the forms over. I filled out the paperwork that afternoon. That gave me a fresh income stream, one Tom had no idea existed and wouldn't show up in the divorce talks. A week later, I asked Andrew to drive me past our old neighborhood. As we turned the corner, a fresh sign caught my eye: for sale, planted right on Linda's lawn. He's bailing, Andrew murmured. I gave a tight nod. Call Emily. An hour later, Emily confirmed our hunch. Linda emptied nearly $90,000 from her accounts 2 days ago, she told me over the phone. I immediately dialed Sharon. We need to move, I told her. Linda's selling and Tom may be getting ready to bolt. Sharon didn't miss a beat. I'm filing for an emergency order first thing in the morning. freezing all assets and blocking any property transfers until the court sorts this out. The next morning, I woke to a text from Tom. "We need to talk. Just the two of us. No attorneys." I showed it to Andrew. "They're getting nervous," he said with a half smile. I nodded. "Good." I forwarded the message to Sharon. She shot back a quick reply. "Do not answer. Injunction hearing is at 2 p.m. By 1:30, I was walking into the courthouse when I spotted them. Tom and Linda were standing near a black sedan in the parking lot mid-argument. They were so caught up, they didn't even see me across the lot. Quietly, I took out my phone and hit record. 30 seconds of footage. No audio needed. Their gestures, their proximity, their tension told the whole story. Inside, Sharon was waiting near the bench. "Got something?" I murmured, handing her my phone. She reviewed the clip, her lips curling slightly. "Perfect. Kavanaugh's already in a no-nonsense mood today." I smoothed down the front of my blazer. "Let's not waste it." Judge Kavanaugh's chambers were more intimate than the courtroom. Just him, the attorneys, Tom, and me. Linda wasn't allowed in. She wasn't part of the divorce case. Sharon queued up the video on the judge's monitor. As it played, the silence in the room was heavy. The footage needed no explanation. When it ended, the judge leaned forward, folding his hands. "Ms. Keller," he addressed Tom's lawyer. "Would you like to explain why your client has testified that he has no involvement with Ms. Price when this footage suggests otherwise?" Keller looked rattled, smoothing her skirt. "Your Honor, the personal nature of the relationship has no bearing on the financial dispute at hand." The judge's eyes sharpened. "It certainly matters when we're looking at patterns of financial misconduct." He turned his attention to Tom. "Mr. Miller, are you preparing to leave the state with Ms. Price?" Tom's face drained of color. No. The judge raised a hand, cutting him off. "The court has reason to believe you and Ms. Price have been moving significant funds, that Ms. Price is in the process of selling her residence, and that you accessed marital assets while your spouse was incapacitated. This points to a coordinated attempt to conceal or transfer resources." His gaze swept across both lawyers. "I'm issuing an immediate freeze on all assets tied to both Mr. Miller and Ms. Price. Neither of you may liquidate, transfer, or remove funds without court authorization. Neither of you is allowed to leave the state without prior court approval," Judge Kavanaugh continued firmly. Then he turned toward me. "Given Ms. Miller's health status and the documented financial abuse that occurred while she was incapacitated, I'm granting her temporary sole access to the marital residence." Tom made a strangled noise in his throat, eyes wide. "Your Honor," Keller started, but the judge raised a hand. "The exploitation of a spouse during a medical crisis is something this court treats with the utmost seriousness, Counselor. Frankly, you're fortunate I'm not referring this for potential criminal investigation." Sharon calmly gathered her files, a small, knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. As we exited the courtroom, Tom caught my gaze for a brief second. For the first time, I saw something new flicker there, not love, not anger, but fear. Not of me, but of the consequences finally catching up to him. 3 months after leaving the hospital, I moved back into the home. My home now. The divorce wrapped up much faster than anyone predicted. Once the court issued the injunction, Tom stopped fighting. Linda had slipped quietly out of the picture, leaving him to face the fallout alone. In the end, the judge granted me the house, my pickup, and the bulk of our savings, close to 80%. Tom kept his car and was awarded the remaining 20%. As for the hidden account, we split it evenly, but only after Tom's portion covered my legal expenses. I never spoke to him directly again. Every message, every negotiation, it all went through the lawyers. Last I heard, Tom had relocated to Chicago, trying to rebuild his life. About 6 months later, I decided it was time to let go of the house. There were too many ghosts in those rooms, too many painful memories woven into the walls. I sold it and bought a smaller place on the edge of Springfield, closer to Andrew and Emily. With some of the proceeds, I helped Emily cover her final semester of law school. She's going to be an incredible attorney one day, determined, smart, and kind. I don't haul freight anymore. My cardiologist was blunt. The stress, the hours, the miles, it was too much for my heart to handle. So I found a role in dispatch, coordinating routes and drivers. It's not the same as being on the road, but there's a peace in coming home every evening and knowing where I'll be when the sun sets. Stability has its own quiet kind of joy. Sometimes people ask if I'm bitter, if I carry resentment for what Tom did. The truth is, I don't. Not anymore. We can't control how people treat us. We can only control how we rise when they knock us down. Tom thought he was robbing me of everything the day he cleared out that account. Instead, he forced me to stand up for myself, to rebuild in a way I never had the courage to before. Just last week, as I was sorting through an old storage bin, I found our wedding album. For a moment, I considered tossing it out, but I didn't. I tucked it back into the box. It's part of my journey now, a piece of the past I've made peace with. The heart attack nearly took my life. The betrayal almost shattered me. But here I am, standing, changed, maybe even stronger. Some lessons come at a cost. Some people walk out of your life, and that's a blessing you only recognize later. And sometimes, the life you build afterward is better than the one you thought you wanted. If you've made it this far into my story, thank you. Sharing this chapter of my life wasn't easy, but I believe there's strength in speaking the truth. I want to invite you, yes, you watching right now, to join me in this journey. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what part of this story resonated with you, what lessons you've learned from betrayal, heartbreak, or recovery in your own life. I want to hear your voices, your wisdom, and your encouragement, not just for me, but for others in this community who might be facing their own storms. I know I'm not the only one who's been blindsided, left to rebuild when it felt like the ground was ripped from beneath my feet. So, here's the advice I offer you from the heart. When life pulls the rug out, you have every right to grieve, but don't stay down forever. Gather your courage, even if it's just a little each day, and start taking back the pieces of yourself. Lean on the people who love you. Seek the help you need, whether it's legal, emotional, or financial. Most importantly, remember this: you are worth standing up for. Please hit the like button if this story meant something to you, subscribe if you want to hear more stories of resilience, and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that no betrayal gets the final word. Let's build a circle of support in the comments, because none of us should have to walk through these hard moments alone. Thank you for being here. I'm grateful you're part of this journey.